It was a mistake, a blink, a slip of the eye as I walked past the living room, but once it registered, the image burned into my mind. Another aimless afternoon, the kind where time just oozes by, each minute a heavy weight. Laundry in hand, freshly folded, heading for Chris's room, trying hard not to think about the cracks widening in my marriage to Mark. Chris, my stepson, 25, sprawled on the couch, phone glued to his hand, scrolling with that easy boredom of someone without a single worry. Just as I passed behind him, a flicker of light caught my eye, the faint glow of his screen. I glanced down, not even thinking, and then it hit me. His phone screen, a gallery of women, all curves and come-hither looks. He swiped, and a silent video started, the kind that makes your breath catch in your throat. My steps faltered, laundry almost tumbling to the floor. He must have felt my presence because he whipped around, face crimson, fingers flying to lock the screen. "Sarah," he stammered, voice cracking. "I didn't mean to, I'm sorry. I just muttered something, turned away, my face burning, heart hammering like a trapped bird." But walking away, the moment replayed in my mind and a cold certainty settled in. Nothing would ever be the same. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of replays, those images, that silent clip, looping in my head, and Chris's reaction, the frantic screen lock, his stammered name echoing louder. I kept telling myself it was nothing, he's a young guy, normal curiosity, harmless. But it wasn't the content itself. It was the sudden, thick silence that dropped between us, heavy and unspoken. Dinner was just us two, Mark predictably stuck at the office, leaving Chris and me to navigate the silence, a living thing growing with every clink of silverware. I had to break it, so, desperate, I asked, "Any word from those jobs you applied for?" He looked up, guarded. "Not yet. Still waiting." I nodded, picking at my salad. "Something will come through, just takes time." "Yeah, maybe," he mumbled, pushing chicken around his plate. Conversation died, choked by the unspoken. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Next day, I woke early, determined to scrub the slate clean, to bury yesterday under a mountain of chores. I attacked the house with manic energy, scrubbing floors, dusting shelves, a whirlwind of denial. Mid-morning, I was vacuuming in the living room, right by the couch, ground zero. Chris walked in, hair still damp from the shower, coffee mug in hand. He hesitated, saw me. "Morning," he said, voice careful. "Morning," I replied, not looking up, vacuum roaring. He lingered, searching for words. "About yesterday," he finally said. I froze, the vacuum's hum filling the sudden silence. "You don't have to," I said quickly, shutting off the machine, straightening up. I didn't want you to see that," he said, cheeks flushing again. "Stupid, embarrassing." "It's fine," I waved it off. "Let's just forget it." He nodded, but the tension in his posture said otherwise. Days crawled by, a minefield of tiptoeing around each other, careful to avoid any glance that might acknowledge what had happened. But the tension was there, a live wire humming beneath the surface. I caught him watching me sometimes, a lingering look before his eyes darted away, and I wasn't immune. Moments when I'd find myself watching him, noticing things I hadn't before, the sharp line of his jaw when he was focused, the quiet confidence in his movements. It was a rainy afternoon, Mark out of town on another business trip, leaving Chris and me alone in the brownstone. I was in the kitchen making tea when he walked in. "Want some?" I asked, gesturing to the kettle. "Sure," he said, leaning against the counter. We stood there silent, the rain drumming against the windows, the only sound the soft hiss of the kettle. Finally, he spoke. "Sarah, I don't want things to be weird between us." I looked up, startled. "They're not weird." He gave a small, rueful smile. "They are, and it's my fault." "It's not your fault," I said quickly. "It was an accident." "Still," he said, voice softer now, "I don't want you to think anything bad about me." I set the mug down, turned to face him fully. "Chris, I don't think badly of you." For a long moment, we just looked at each other, the air thick, heavy with something unspoken. Then he stepped closer, eyes searching mine. "Sarah," he began, voice barely a whisper. "Drew, this—" I started, but he cut me off, stepping back, face flushing. "I know," he said quickly. "I'm sorry. Forget it." He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with the frantic beat of my own heart. Sleep was a lost cause that night. I tossed, turned, the kitchen moment replaying over and over. Around midnight, I gave up, went downstairs, hoping chamomile tea would quiet the storm in my head. I found him in the living room, the soft glow of the TV painting his face in shadows. "Up late," I said, leaning against the doorway. He glanced over, expression softening. Couldn't sleep. Me neither. I hesitated, then sat down on the opposite end of the couch, a chasm of space between us. Silence settled, the low murmur of the TV filling the room. Finally, he spoke. "Do you ever feel stuck?" he asked, voice quiet. I looked over, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "Like your life isn't really yours," he said. "Like you're just going through the motions." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I feel that way sometimes." He turned to me, gaze intense. "What do you do about it?" I thought for a moment. "I don't know, I guess I try to focus on the things that make me happy, the little things." He gave a humorless laugh. "I wish I knew what those were for me." Before I could answer, he shifted closer, expression softening again. "Sarah," he said, voice low. My breath caught. For a moment, I didn't move. Then slowly, I reached out, hand brushing his. The contact sent a jolt, a shock wave. I pulled back quickly. "We can't," I said, voice trembling. "I know," he whispered, barely audible, but neither of us moved. We never spoke of that night on the couch, but the tension had shifted, deepened, become something unspoken, undeniable. It wasn't long before we found ourselves alone again. Another late night, kitchen cleanup after dinner. Chris wandered in, usual easy posture, a little stiffer than usual. "Wine?" I asked, gesturing to the open bottle on the counter. He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, sure." We sat at the small kitchen table, wine glasses between us, the dishwasher humming softly in the background. "You seem distracted lately," I said, breaking the silence. He gave a small, wry smile. "Could say the same about you." I laughed, a light sound, but forced. "Maybe we're both just tired." "Tired of what?" he asked, gaze steady. I hesitated, the question too close to the raw nerve of everything. "Everything," I admitted softly. Chris leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I don't think you give yourself enough credit, Sarah. You keep everything together here. I don't know how you do it." His words caught me off guard, a warmth spreading through me, something I hadn't felt in years. "Thank you," I said quietly. We sat in silence, his words hanging between us. Then he reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. "I mean it," he said, voice low. I didn't pull away. The next day, a storm rolled in, heavy rain, howling wind. Mark still out of town, leaving Chris and me to weather it alone. Power flickered out early evening, plunging the brownstone into darkness. Candles lit, casting long shadows in the living room. Chris came downstairs, phone in hand. "Power's out everywhere," he said, sitting on the couch. "Figures," I replied, sinking into the chair across from him. "Looks like we'll have to entertain ourselves the old-fashioned way." He grinned. "Board games?" "Probably," I said, laughing. We ended up playing Scrabble on the coffee table, candlelight flickering, playful barbs over questionable words. "Zon? That's not a word," I laughed, placing my tiles. "It is," he protested. "Look it up." "How?" "Internet's down," I teased. "Then you'll just have to trust me." His grin was infectious, and for a moment I forgot the storm raging outside. But as the game went on, playful banter faded, replaced by quieter moments. Hands brushed, reaching for tiles, and I felt the warmth of his presence, a tangible thing. Game ended, I started gathering tiles, but Chris reached out, stopped me. "Sarah," he said, voice soft. I looked up, met his gaze. The air felt electric, charged with everything unsaid. Before I could respond, he leaned across the table and kissed me. Tentative at first, a question, not a demand. When I didn't pull away, it deepened, the unspoken tension of weeks finally breaking. When we finally broke apart, I stared at him, heart pounding. "This is crazy," I whispered. "Maybe," he said, voice steady, "but it doesn't feel wrong." After that night, everything shifted, invisible line crossed, no going back. Started small, stolen kisses in the kitchen, lingering touches when no one was looking. But days went on. We grew bolder. One afternoon, Mark at the office, Chris found me folding laundry, stood in the doorway, watching for a moment, then stepped inside. "Need help?" he asked, tone teasing. "You even know how to fold a shirt?" I replied, raising an eyebrow. He grinned. "Not really, but I'm a quick learner." Moved closer, presence filling the small space. When his hands brushed mine, I looked up. Intensity in his gaze sent a shiver. "Sarah," he murmured, voice barely a whisper. Didn't stop him when he leaned in, laundry forgotten, lost in the moment. Soon, others started noticing. Valerie, my best friend, first to comment. Coffee morning eyed me carefully in the kitchen. "You seem different," she said, tone casual but curious. "Different how?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "I don't know," she said, tilting her head. "Like, happier." I shrugged, playing it off. "Maybe I've just been getting more sleep." But Valerie wasn't convinced. "Well, whatever it is, keep it up. Nice to see you smile." I smiled again, but her words lingered. Chris's ex, Tiffany, reappeared. Another complication. Showed up unannounced, blonde hair perfect, smile razor sharp. "Hey, Chris," she said, tone dripping with sweetness. "Long time no see." I watched from the doorway as Chris greeted her, posture tense. "Tiffany," he said, voice guarded. "What are you doing here?" "Thought I'd stop by. Catch up," she said, brushing past him into the living room. Chris shot me a quick, apologetic glance, followed her. I stayed out of sight, heart racing, straining to hear. "Heard you're staying here now," Tiffany said, tone light but edged. "How's that working out?" "It's fine," Chris replied curtly. "Fine," she echoed. "You used to hate this place. What changed?" When Chris didn't answer, she laughed softly. "Interesting." That evening, Chris and I in the living room, tension thick. "Tiffany's trouble," I said finally. "I know," he replied, jaw tightening, "but she won't do anything, just fishing for information." "You sure?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, she's all talk." But uncertainty lingered in the air. First time, I felt the weight of what we were risking. After Tiffany's visit, Chris and I grew more cautious, but feelings intensified. Secrecy added a thrill to our encounters. Stolen moments became bolder. One afternoon, Mark at the office. Tiffany hadn't resurfaced. Chris found me in the garden, pruning overgrown roses, trying to distract myself from the chaos of my life. "Need a hand?" he asked, leaning against the fence. Glanced at him, sweat glistening on his brow from the heat. "You know anything about gardening?" "Not a clue," he admitted, grinning. I laughed, shaking my head. "Then you're useless out here." He stepped closer, tone shifting. "I can think of a few ways to make myself useful." Playful exchange quickly turned into something more. Took the shears from my hands, fingers brushing mine. Garden, tall hedges, overgrown vines, illusion of privacy. We took full advantage, but even lost in the moment, thought of what we were risking loomed large. Week later, Tiffany returned. Sudden reappearance caught us off guard. Knocked on the door just as I stepped out of the shower. Chris had to answer. Heard her voice from upstairs, sharp, inquisitive. "You've been acting weird lately," she said. "What's going on?" "Nothing's going on," Chris replied, tone defensive. "Right," she said, voice dripping sarcasm. "And I'm supposed to believe that?" When I finally came downstairs, Tiffany's eyes narrowed. "Oh, hi, Sarah," she said sweetly. "Didn't realize you'd be home." "This is my home," I said evenly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. How silly of me to forget." And after she left, Chris and I sat in tense silence. "She's on to us," I said finally. "She doesn't know anything," Chris insisted, but voice lacked conviction. "But she suspects," I countered. "Almost worse." Valerie's curiosity grew harder to deflect. Called one evening, tone casual but probing. "Want to grab lunch tomorrow?" she asked. "Can't," I said quickly. "Too much to do around the house." Pause, then, "You've been busy a lot lately. Everything okay?" "Of course," I said, forcing lightness. "Why wouldn't it be?" "No reason," she said, but hesitation clear. "Just worry about you sometimes, that's all." Assured her I was fine, but conversation left me rattled. Saturday evening, Mark returned early from business trip. Chris and I in the kitchen, laughing over wine, heard front door opening. Heart leaped into my throat. Mark's voice echoed through the house. "Sarah? Chris?" Chris's hand froze halfway to mine, eyes wide. "Quick," I whispered, shoving wine bottle in fridge. "Act normal." Mark walked in, expression cheerful. "What's going on here?" "Just catching up," I said, voice too bright. Mark's eyes lingered on 2 glasses on counter, then nodded. "Nice to see you two getting along." Turned away, I let out breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Chris caught my eye, moment of fear overshadowing everything else. Near discovery left us both on edge. Strain began to show. Chris became more possessive, frustration boiling over one quiet evening. "Why do we have to keep sneaking around?" he demanded, voice sharp. You know why, I replied, tone firm. We can't let anyone find out. I'm tired of hiding, he said, running hand through hair. I sighed, frustration bubbling up. This isn't easy for me either, Chris, but we don't have a choice. Tension simmered rest of the night, questioning how much longer we could keep this up. Valerie finally pushed things to breaking point, stopped by unexpectedly, caught me off guard cleaning living room. I need to talk to you, she said, tone serious. What's going on? I asked, setting down duster. She hesitated. I think you're hiding something, Sarah, and I think it has to do with Chris. Heart raced, tried to maintain composure. What makes you say that? Just a feeling, she said, eyes searching mine. You've been different lately, and I've seen the way Chris looks at you. Opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Sarah, she said softly, if something's going on, you need to tell me before it's too late. That evening, told Chris about Valerie's suspicions. We have to be more careful, I said, voice trembling. Or maybe we should just tell the truth, he said, tone defiant. Are you insane? I snapped. Do you know what that would do to this family? This isn't a family, he said bitterly. It's a lie. I'm tired of pretending. His words cut deep. First time, wondered if we'd made a mistake. Tension reached boiling point days later. Tiffany confronted Chris in the driveway. Watched from window, argument growing heated, her voice rising, gesturing wildly. You're hiding something, she said, accusatory. I'm not, Chris replied, frustration evident. You're lying, she shot back. I'm going to figure out what it is. Chris came inside, face pale. She's not going to let this go, he said. I know, I replied, stomach twisting with dread. Late afternoon, Tiffany's suspicions turned weapon. Chris and I in living room trying to act normal, phone buzzed. Message from unknown number content made my stomach drop. Does Mark know about this? Attached grainy photo of Chris and me in garden, hands brushing, intimate. Chris, I whispered, holding up phone. He leaned closer, face paling. Where did she get that? I don't know, I said, voice trembling. But she's threatening to tell Mark. Before we could speak, doorbell rang. Chris's head snapped up, body tense. That's her, he said, standing abruptly. Chris, wait, I said, grabbing his arm, but he was already heading for the door. Tiffany on porch, arms crossed, smug smile. Long time no see, she said. What the hell are you doing? Chris demanded, stepping outside, pulling door closed. Stayed in living room, straining to hear through thin walls. You've been lying to me, Chris, Tiffany said, voice cold. And to everyone else. Think you can keep this secret forever? What do you want? Chris asked, tone sharp. I want the truth, she said, and I want you to admit it to everyone. Otherwise, these pictures go public. Chris shook his head. You're bluffing. If you had anything real, you wouldn't be sitting here. Her eyes narrowed. You're awfully confident for someone with so much to lose. Back inside, pacing, phone clutched tight, buzzed with call from Chris, answered immediately. She's not backing down, he said, voice tight. She's threatening to go to Mark tonight. Heart sank. Then we're out of time. Before either could say more, heard front door opening, stomach twisted. Mark's voice echoed. Sarah? Turned to see Mark standing in doorway, briefcase in hand, brow furrowed. You're home early, I said, voice trembling. Wanted to surprise you, he said, setting down briefcase. But you look like you've seen a ghost. Before I could respond, phone buzzed again. Mark's gaze dropped to it, eyes narrowing. Who's calling you at this hour? It's nothing, I said quickly, but he stepped closer, reaching for the phone, snatched it from my hand before I could stop him, face darkening as he saw Chris's name. Chris? He said, tone sharp. Why is he calling you? Mark, it's not what you think, I began, but words felt hollow. What's going on, Sarah? He demanded, voice rising. Don't lie to me. Before I could answer, Chris walked through the front door, expression grim. Chris, Mark said, turning to him, what's going on here? Chris's gaze flicked to me, and in that moment, I knew the truth was out. Confrontation explosive. Mark's anger boiled over as Chris and I tried to explain. No justification could soften the blow. You betrayed me, Mark said, voice shaking. Both of you, how could you do this? I'm sorry, I said, tears streaming down my face. I never meant for this to happen. Don't, he snapped. Don't pretend this was some accident. Chris tried to intervene, tone pleading. Dad, it's not as simple as you think. Don't call me that, Mark interrupted, voice cold. You're no son of mine. Words hung in the air, a death knell, leaving Chris and me speechless. Just when it seemed impossible, phone buzzed again. Text from Tiffany. I warned you. Moments later, Mark's phone buzzed too. Glanced at screen, face darkening. Opened message. What is this? He demanded, holding up phone. Didn't need to see screen to know. Tiffany had sent the pictures. This is what you've been hiding? Mark said, voice shaking with fury. You disgust me. Face twisted with rage, stared at incriminating photos. Hands trembled, anger, disbelief, or both. Get out, he said finally, voice low, cold. Mark, I started, voice shaking, but he cut me off. I said get out, Sarah, he shouted, slamming phone on table. And you, he added, turning to Chris, you're not welcome here anymore. Pack your things, leave now. Chris stepped forward, hands raised in pleading gesture. Dad, please, just listen. You're not my son, Mark spat, voice cracking. Whatever you are, whatever you become, I don't want to see it. Knees weakened, weight of his words sank in. Mark, we can talk about this, I said, desperate to salvage anything. Nothing to talk about, he said, voice icy. You two made your choices. Now you can live with them. As Chris and I gathered belongings, Brownstone felt heavier than ever. Walls seemed to press in, suffocating in familiarity. Just as I zipped suitcase, door creaked open, Mark in doorway, face ashen. There's something you should know, he said, voice strangely flat. Chris and I turned, wary. Tiffany called me, he said, crossing arms. She's been feeding me information for weeks, about both of you. Chris's jaw tightened. What did she say? Mark hesitated, then continued. She claims this wasn't the first time you've done something like this, Chris. She said you've been involved in situations like this before, with other women. Accusation hit like thunderclap. Turned to Chris, searching for denial, anything to contradict. It's not true, Chris said, but voice wavered, planting seed of doubt. Isn't it? Mark said, gaze narrowing. Because I checked into her claims. Called someone she mentioned, woman in Seattle. She backed up the story. What story? I asked, voice rising. Chris, what is he talking about? It's nothing, Chris said quickly. It was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding that ruined another family? Mark snapped. Doesn't sound like nothing. Room spun, pieces falling into place. Blind? Or had I chosen not to see? Chris turned to me, expression pleading. Sarah, you know me. You know I would never hurt anyone like that. But words felt hollow now, tainted by Mark's doubts. I thought I knew you, I said quietly. Mark stepped closer, voice sharp. He's a liar, Sarah. He's been lying to both of us this whole time, and you fell for it. I started, but words caught in throat. Mark's expression softened slightly. You're not the first woman he's manipulated, and if you stay with him, you won't be the last. Chris's face darkened. You're just trying to turn her against me, he said, voice low, dangerous. She deserves to know the truth, Mark countered, whether you like it or not. Before we could speak, phone buzzed again. Text from Tiffany, more direct. I told you it would all come out. Hope it was worth it. Showed message to Chris, swore under his breath. She's not going to stop, I said, voice trembling. Even if we leave, she'll keep coming after us. She won't, Chris said firmly. I'll make sure of it. Tone sent chill down spine. Chris, what are you going to do? Whatever I have to, he said, jaw tightening. Later that night, overheard Chris on phone. Voice low, couldn't make out all words, but what I did made my blood run cold. She won't be a problem much longer, he said. Hung up, confronted him. What did you mean by that? Chris turned, expression unreadable. It's nothing, I'm handling it. Handling it how? I pressed. Chris, this is serious. You can't just... I said I'm handling it, he snapped, tone sharper than ever. First time, wondered if I'd made a mistake trusting him. Next morning, call from Valerie. Have you seen the news? She asked, voice breathless. No? Why? Dread crept in. Tiffany's missing, she said. They're saying she hasn't been seen since last night. Phone slipped from hand, words sinking in. Mind raced with questions, each more terrifying. Confronted Chris, didn't deny knowing what happened. She won't bother us anymore, he said simply, tone chillingly calm. What did you do? I demanded, voice shaking. What I had to, he said. With Tiffany gone, immediate threat vanished, but damage done. Mark filed for divorce, trust shattered beyond repair. Chris left town without a word, leaving me alone to pick up pieces. Heard rumors about him, stories of other women, other scandals, each chipped away at version of him I thought I'd known. Months later, sat on back porch of house no longer mine, staring at garden. Roses overgrown again, wild beauty, stark contrast to chaos of my life. Valerie visited often, presence, small comfort. "Do you regret it?" she asked one evening, voice soft. Thought long moment. "I regret trusting him," I answered. "But I don't regret wanting more." For a little while, I felt alive again. She nodded, gaze distant. Sometimes that's all we can ask for. Watching sunset, realized she was right. Past undone, but future still mine to shape.